Welcome everyone to the Crypto Finance Revolution cocktail event coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm your host, Dara Albright, and I'd just like to start by saying we are living in truly remarkable times. Crypto finance is being called the most disruptive yet greatest wealth creation opportunity in the history of mankind. And its impact on the global financial system is going to be colossal. You know, we are experiencing right now something really special, and you might not feel that way when you're kind of looking at the trading activity recently of a lot of cryptocurrencies. But I will tell you this, despite all the recent market turmoil, despite all the doomsday predictions that you're hearing from the Debbie Downers, we really are in for some exciting times. And so tonight, what we're going to try and do is make some sense of, this recent turmoil. We're going to use it as a chance to identify some opportunities and trends, because typically, we find that even in the midst of a lot of turmoil and market fluctuation, that's where some of the best opportunities often hide. And we're also going to talk a lot about the future tonight. That's my favorite topic of conversation. But the primary goal is to connect Atlanta's investors and business leaders with some of the latest and most compelling innovations in crypto finance. And really specifically the ones that I believe will help fuel this, this mass adoption of the crypto finance sector. So it's going to be a really fun night. Just a kind of couple of things I just want to lay out right now. We are broadcasting live, so hello to all of you virtual viewers. Yes, the camera does add 10 pounds. I just thought I should say that. And I'm also going to ask everyone to just please save all of your questions for the end, because what we're going to do is all the speakers are going to come up, and then we're going to do a whole interactive panel session with Q&A. And I know we've got a lot of people that are out there in the audience today, sitting here that, really have a lot of brain capital and a lot, I think, to lend to the conversations. You're experts yourselves in the space. So I think it'll just be really great to really have a true, really fun, interactive, back and forth, and everyone just sharing ideas, because I think that that's really what it's all about. So with that, all right, let's get started. I have one question, and that is, what will the future of finance look like? I think this is the question that everyone is really trying to find an answer to. I mean, I know I am. And I think if we could just answer this one little question, we'll know how to proceed, right? I mean, we'll pretty much know everything. We could just know what the future will look like. But in order to answer that question, we've got some other questions that we really need to also ask ourselves. And things that we need to think about. So when we think about the future of finance, we have to think about, will paper money exist in this future of finance? Will securities like stocks and bonds as we know them exist in this future? Will finance be digitized and tokenized? Will Bitcoin be accepted at every merchant on the planet? Will banks even exist in this new paradigm? Or will banks be converted into like little micro apartments or WeWork offices? I could see that happening. What about Charles Schwab retail stores, right? Are they going to exist, or are they going to be transformed into organic juiceries and cannabis dispensaries? Who knows? A lot to think about, a lot of questions to ask. But I think the main question that we have to ask when we're envisioning the future is, what exactly is going on here? We really need to make sense of what we're witnessing in the space. Is cryptocurrency some speculative bubble? Is it a passing fad? Or is it something more? Is it a revolution? Is it the next evolution, the next iteration in this whole financial evolution big picture? Or is it some kind of combination? And that's really what we want to talk about. Now, if you ask incumbents, those people that are actually being disrupted, they'll tell you it's a fad. They'll tell you it's a bubble. They'll tell you it's a fraud, maybe a fraud. They'll tell you that Bitcoin is rat poison. They'll tell you Bitcoin is a turd. Heard of that one too. How about this one? It's a bubble wrapped in techno-mysticism inside a cocoon of libertarian ideology. Paul Krugman. But the truth is, none of these people have any idea. And these are really the last people on the planet that you even want to be asking for advice, because you can't be objective when you're in the process of being disrupted. Okay, you know, incumbents are really the last to see the disruption, not because they're not smart. I mean, these are some really brilliant people. It's not. It's that they don't want to see it. So that's why you really don't want to ask them. You know, I thought Jamie Dimon's Bitcoin commentary is my personal favorite. After stating that he says Bitcoin is going nowhere, then he expresses concern about how are governments going to feel when Bitcoin gets really big. How do you even put those two sentences together, right? So his comments actually inspired this little chart that I like to call the Don't Ask Jamie Dimon About Bitcoin chart. And I'm going to post it on my slide share so you could read it at your leisure, but here's a little bit of a spoiler alert. Okay, it's filled with hypocrisy, it's filled with contradictions, and it's filled with utter miscalculations. And anyone here Seinfeld fans? Okay, remember George Costanza? It was like do the opposite, you know, and it really worked for him. Do the opposite. That kind of worked out well, but it's a fun one to read. But now this slide I put on, this is to show you that, you know, I'm an equal opportunity offender. And I don't just pick on living naysayers, I also pick on the dead ones. So, you know, crypto is hardly the first innovation that we've seen that was misconstrued as a passing fad, and certainly will not be the last. This is great. I mean, if you see the first one here, this one was Ford Motor Car. The Michigan Savings Bank president famously said back then to one of Ford's initial investors, one of his shareholders, that the horse is here to stay, but the automobile, that's a novelty. That's just a fad. Well, despite, you know, this morning, the shareholder ended up buying 50 shares of Ford stock and ended up selling it for $12.5 million. Not a bad investment. How about this one? The next one, Alexander Graham Bell. He apparently offered the president of Western Union Telegraph the full rights to the telephone for only $100,000. That was it. The president declined, basically saying it was nothing more than a toy. How about 2007 when Steve Ballmer came out and said, the then CEO of Microsoft, said that the iPhone was going nowhere. And of course, my all-time favorite from Paul Krugman, you have to pick on him, his prediction that he said that by 2005, it would become clear by 2005 that the internet's effect on the economy is no greater than the fax machine. How'd that one work out for you, Paul? So that is why you never ask an incumbent what they think of a new technology. And I heard this quote from Mark Yusko, who's the CEO of Morgan Creek Capital, which is a wealth management firm on the forefront of digital asset strategies. I thought this was a brilliant quote. This was at an event that I went to last month in Dallas that was run by Don Friedman, who's here, produced that event, the Digital Asset Strategy Summit. I have to tell you, I left that event feeling so inspired. It was incredible. It was really just the feeling that I left with, the optimism and the inspiration. It was fantastic. If you get a chance, hang out, talk to Don later on tonight, and he's doing it again this coming up October back in Dallas. So if you get a chance, definitely worth going. All right. So why are we even asking incumbents about the future anyway? You know, I mean, why are you going to ask someone in the past about the future? I mean, when I was learning or wanted to learn about the Great Depression, I didn't ask my kids, I asked my grandparents. You know, when I want to forecast, you know, personal finance trends, you know, I'm going to ask the generation that's about to inherit $3 trillion in wealth. I'm not going to ask the generation that's leaving it behind. You know, think about this. In 8 years, okay, there will be no person under 18 years old who ever lived in a world without Bitcoin. Millennials and Gen Zers, they're our future, and trust me, their views are so diametrically different than their predecessors. It's incredible. I mean, they just look at the world in a completely different way. You know, they favor crypto to other asset classes. They trust Bitcoin more than they trust conventional asset classes. They trust technology more than they trust banks, more than they trust brokers. You know, this is a generation that would rather get a root canal than visit a bank. You know, and sorry to pick on Capital One, but no matter how many lattes you serve, that's not going to help. You know, these are tech savvy, tech interested. It's a different world. So I realize that, you know, the technicals right now paint a pretty bleak picture. So I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes just talking about some of the other fundamentals, because I think that those metrics tell a completely different story. So this is actually a chart of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple, and you know, we know what's going on. Been sort of a bloodbath as of recently, but you know, like I said, the other pictures tell a different story. Wallet growth. Wallet growth is astonishing. It's accelerating. It's not slowing down. You know, despite turbulent market conditions, continues to rise. Analysts are predicting that 200 million Bitcoin users within the next 6 years at the current rate of growth. So if you factor that in to today's valuation, or maybe yesterday's, I didn't even look at it today, but you figure at 10 times, okay, the amount of digital wallets that we have now, you're still looking at, you know, close to $1 trillion marketplace in less than a decade. Job growth. Okay, this is according to Lou Kerner, who's, I think, one of the most forward thinkers in the history of finance. I mean, he's just brilliant. He looks at job openings as a leading indicator of the health of an industry. He says, you know, according to Lou, job openings lead to job hirings, which then lead to people building things. And the more people that are building things, you know, the greater opportunity to build that thing that will bring crypto mainstream. So as Lou's chart shows here, there was a significant increase in blockchain-related job openings, and that's really not slowing down right now either. I mean, it just shows that employers remain confident in the crypto market opportunity. You know, they're continuing to make long-term investments in their teams. They're continuing to make, you know, long-term investments in the space, and it, you know, regardless of, you know, the trading activity. So that's a great metric. Same thing with venture capital. I mean, you know, it hasn't stopped venture capital from pouring into the space either. Venture capital investment in blockchain and crypto has almost tripled in the first 3 quarters of 2018. And that's according to a new Dyer report that was released a couple of weeks, actually 2 months ago, September. And the growth is just not in terms only in the number of deals, venture capital deals, but the median size is also increasing, and that's pretty significant. So this is kind of my favorite metrics. I mean, obviously, I mean, this is, you know, the business that I've been in for a long, long time. You know, for a long, long time, even though I'm just 25, but this is really my favorite metric. I mean, I look at conference growth, and you know, I've often said that you could gauge a success of an industry by the growth and enthusiasm at its annual conventions. You know, because it's there you really could get an upfront and personal peek of the emerging innovation that's going to drive mass adoption. You get a firsthand view of what's really happening. And just to give you kind of like a little story about this, in 1996, I helped plan the first ever space and satellite conference for Wall Street. It was 1996, so it was kind of pre-cell phones for the most part. And it was at the Grand Hyatt in New York City, and the first speaker went on, and was from a company called CD Radio. And at the time, you know, little micro cap stock, not many people had heard of it. And now it was actually, the company ended up being bought by SiriusXM, so it kind of became SiriusXM. But at the time, people didn't know what satellite was. Like if you would have talked about if people saw a satellite dish on your house, they would think that you were an alien trying to phone the mothership, okay? Like no one talked about satellites. And he went on, you had to see, the minute he stepped off the stage, you saw every single portfolio manager at that event run to the payphones of the Grand Hyatt, calling their trading desk, placing orders. And we sat there with a Quotron machine watching the stock, just go up. And it was then and there that I just realized the power, the true power and potential of conferences. So, it's an important metrics to look at. Don was just telling me that he was at Consensus last week, and he said an interesting, something that he found interesting, that he noticed, was that from the differences from last year to this year, that last year there were a lot more, I think, tech, more jeans and t-shirts, more techies. This year it was a lot more suits. It was a lot more institutions. So it's interesting to see, just the dynamics and the changings. You really could gauge a lot from conference, and of course the growth too. It's just been spectacular. So I love this quote. This is a quote by Bill Taylor, who you're going to meet momentarily. But it's just major players are already heavily invested in the space. Both NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange are set to launch Bitcoin future products in the first quarter of 2019. And that's, obviously in spite of the recent decline. I think this quote is bad. I think Bill really summed it up best. This is the only industry, really, that you've ever seen. It's only that I've ever seen too. I think that anybody has ever seen, where the lower the prices go, the more people want in, not out. And I just think that statement just sums it all up. So if you want to talk bubbles, we could talk bubbles. We could talk bubbles all day long. Let's talk bubbles. So let's talk bubbles. You see that little kind of microscopic dot? I don't even think you even can see it up there. Well, that's what they're calling the crypto bubble, okay? And the World Economic Forum predicts that 10% of the global GDP, so that's approximately 7.8 trillion, is going to be stored on the blockchain in 10 years. So think about that for a second. 7.8 trillion on the blockchain, and now look at this chart again, okay? Look at the global derivatives market. I mean, tell me where the bubbles are. The fact is, crypto is the fastest growing asset class in the history of mankind. It took mutual funds 60 years to reach 300 billion in size, market capitalization, a feat crypto accomplished in just 8. I believe that crypto, and I truly believe this, is ultimately going to displace equities as an asset class. There's an article on the tables there that really details 5 reasons why. Now, I'm not saying that $100 trillion in global equity markets is just going to evaporate. It's not going to happen. But what I do think is happening, and we really are seeing some really interesting technological and cultural trends and shifts. And I think what's actually happening is that equities, it's not going to disappear, but it's going to evolve. And it's going to evolve into a novel hybrid asset class that we're going to see that's going to retain some of the characteristics of its equity lineage, but it's also going to look and feel a lot more like crypto. And it's going to be very, very interesting. I truly believe that crypto is the mother of corporate finance innovation. And it really is going to transform corporate finance in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. That's going to be actually the next article that I'm working on, so it's kind of in my head. But of course, we do have some obstacles and hurdles that we need to overcome. The first, of course, is being fear. Fear of change being probably the biggest fear that's out there. It's interesting. I think it's psychologically, it takes a while before fear of change succumbs to fear of missing out. But I think there's a really interesting dynamic that's in the crypto markets. You have a fear of change from the incumbents, from the older generation that's really trying to understand, they're trying, to slow down the change. But then you've got the fear of missing out from the younger generation. So it's really an interesting dynamic, I think, that's happening. I think another obstacle, obviously, is lack of education, lack of awareness, understanding the biggest thing. I think people fear, in general, most what they don't understand. So, I think we need more events like this. We need more events like Don's. We need, where's Linda? Is Linda here? There's Linda, the president of the Blockchain Chamber of Commerce. Cindy Taylor, FinTech Capital, FinTech News. We need to get more information out there into the hands of the people. Another concern, and this is probably the most worrisome for me, is regulatory uncertainty. I think a lot is really riding right now on U.S. crypto regulations, a tremendous amount. I think everything is riding on it. I think our standing in the future global economy is riding on it. I think even our leadership as a global innovator is riding on it. And we really need to get this right. And we're losing. I mean, there are countries out there that, I know Bill's going to talk a little bit more about this, but that are ahead of us in, it's moving innovation overseas. That's a problem. Another concern, another obstacle, cybersecurity. Hacking has been an issue. Now, this one actually worries me the least. And it worries me the least is because I know that there is a solution for that. And tonight you're going to have a chance to meet the company that's providing not only a security solution to that, but using biometrics technology, but also adding and bringing simplicity and speed to this, onerous and complex process of doing these transactions. So, I think it all comes down to keep it simple, stupid, and we're not really quite there yet. It's still kind of, it's still a challenging process. I mean, even just plugging in passwords. I mean, wait till you see Andy Finch's presentation. Click, put your finger there. I mean, it's a game changer. So, and obviously, I think with great challenge comes great opportunity. So, here's where I kind of look at the areas just from an investment standpoint of where I think the most compelling opportunities lie. So one, infrastructure, cybersecurity, huge. We just talked about, we'll talk about more transaction speed, custodial solutions. And I'm not only talking about custodial solutions, everyone's talking about custody in the space right now, but they're not really talking about custodying for self-directed IRAs. And that is, I think, a huge opportunity. We have Jim Jones with us today in the audience from New Direction IRA and the IRA Exchange. And he's really been on the forefront and taken a real leadership role in bringing, the alternative assets, kind of merging, introducing self-directed IRAs to the growing alternative asset community. So he's going to talk. You talk to him at the cocktail hour, and find out a little bit about some of the innovation that's going on there. That's going to help unlock $14 trillion in retirement capital. Also, I think another area, growth of merchant acceptance. We're going to starting to see that more and more. I mean, more and more places are accepting Bitcoin. Even states are accepting it for taxes. It's interesting to see how that's all going to start to grow too. I also think it's really interesting, no one's kind of talking about this, but I'm actually intrigued by it, non-tech financial innovation. So just innovations in corporate finance and financing structures, I think it's really interesting. Also in research, we really don't have any kind of a infrastructure at all for like either sell-side or buy-side research in the space. I think it's a huge opportunity. Really, the research right now, the research world for crypto is Twitter. I mean, there's no real infrastructure. I think that'll change. And then, of course, regulatory. I think, given what's happening here in the U.S., I think that it's important for people to diversify internationally, especially, the longer it takes here, it's going to be a problem. Opportunity zone funds. I think this is a really, really interesting opportunity. And we have Linda Getz here, as I said, president of the Blockchain Chamber of Commerce. She's going to talk a lot about that. I think there's really interesting things happening in that space. We'll focus on that in a second too. And also broadening the definition of the accredited investor. I think everything comes down to that, really, because that's, we're trying to figure all this out now in our security regulations. Just, it doesn't work for this industry, and it doesn't work for the masses. And it always just comes down to that damn accredited investor rule. But hopefully we'll see some changes there too. So let's meet some of the innovations and innovators that are driving the mass adoption of crypto finance. First, you're going to meet some of the members of the IT Biometrics team, including Andy Finch, who's right up there. He's the CEO. IT Biometrics has created a fingerprint wallet for ultra-secure cryptocurrency transactions. And using this technology, the wallet essentially eliminates the need for passwords, and it essentially provides crypto investors with a safe and simple transaction experience. Andy is going to discuss how Biometrics is using, how IT Biometrics is using the technology to bring simplicity and security to cryptocurrency investing, and he'll also be demoing the product too. So we're going to see that. And by the way, I also want to just do a shout out because IT Biometrics actually won an award yesterday at the FinTech on the Block. So congratulations to you guys. That was fantastic. And then we're going to have Bill Taylor, who's going to come up right after Andy. He's the Chief Investment Officer of FinTech Capital. He's going to demonstrate how conventional commodities can bring stability to cryptocurrency investing. And he's also going to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities emanating overseas that are due to the domestic regulatory uncertainty. So it'll be interesting to talk about that. He's the author of the Taylor Report. He's got over 35 years of experience in the financial markets, beginning as an original member of the Chicago Board of Options Exchange and subsequently as a member of the Chicago Board of Trade and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So he brings a lot of expertise and insight into this. And now he's launching the very first crypto fund that offers security and stability of physical gold. That's the first of its kind. And then we're going to conclude with Linda Getz, who's the president of Blockchain Chamber, as I said. She's going to discuss how opportunity zone funds will fuel cryptocurrency investing. So for those of you who don't know an opportunity zone fund, it's a new tax advantage investment vehicle that's created, it was created out of the Investing in Opportunities Act, which was part of the tax reform bill that was passed in 2017. And the goal is really to help spur greater private sector investment in targeted communities around the country. And these are called opportunity zones, and they're doing this through tax incentives. And there's a lot of really interesting tie-ins with what's happening in cryptocurrency with crypto investors and this space. So Linda's going to really focus on that. And I'm just going to end with going back to my original question, what will the future of finance look like? So a couple of years ago, I came across this article, and it was basically it was a picture of, it was a whole bunch of pictures actually that they had asked artists in the turn of the last century, the last century, the 1899 to 1900, where they asked artists to draw pictures of what they thought the next 100 years are going to look like, the millennium. And I thought this was so fascinating to look at now. They actually predicted, if you look at it, a submarine, a mobile home, FedEx, right? Video phones, movies, typing into, a self-typewriting, machine. I mean, it's just so amazing. They actually predicted things that actually came about, but it was funny to look at the pictures because our understanding of how we see the future comes from our own present world. So it's interesting to kind of see the pictures. I mean, obviously this is not the style anymore. It's just funny to see those pictures. So it got me thinking when I started thinking about, okay, well, what's the future of finance going to look like? And, and I think it's the same thing as we saw with these 1900 drawings. I think that we're going to see so many of the predictions that we're hearing today, they're all going to come true because when it comes down to it, if the mind can conceive it, it could achieve it, right? So everything is going to come true. But just like these drawings, the same thing, where there are so many aspects of the future of finance that we can't even possibly fathom right now. And we haven't even yet begun to imagine it, but we will, and we are. And that's why I just think it's such an exciting time to be alive, because it's just an amazing, life is just so amazing. I mean, really, we are just, we're so fortunate. I mean, imagination has no bounds, and it's exciting to me. But when it really comes down to it, and you want to know how to predict the future, the one foolproof way to predict the future you can never go wrong? Anyone know? All right, I'll tell you. The one way, the best way, the only way to predict the future is to create it. And that's really what tonight is all about. That's what these events are all about. And I'm really looking forward to tonight seeing these enlightening presentations. I'm looking forward to a lot of these great discussions, new connections, and really just a lot of interaction and sharing of ideas and collaboration. Because this is really what's going to help us imagine tomorrow's financial future. So with that, thank you very much, and my honor to introduce you to Andy Finch, CEO of IT Biometrics.